If you haven't heard about Spider Man Lotus yet, then I am so happy that I'm about to tell you about it because this is a project that so many people, honestly, everybody needs to know about this because I know I personally am so hyped for this. It's so cool. For those of you who don't know what it is a fan film about Spider Man, but it's so different from the Spider-Man movies we get from Sony because that those are superhero movies and obviously this is a superhero movie because it's about Spider-Man, but especially with the marketing for those movies they always focus on like, oh, Spider-Man's a superhero so he's fighting these villains and it's like all this cool action and stuff, and we are still going to get stuff like that in this in the movie for Spider-Man Lotus, but the difference is that this movie focuses much more on the emotional aspect of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Really, the whole idea of being a hero and the whole idea of, with great power comes great responsibility. And we really see that in full effect here with this official trailer. And I did a breakdown of the teaser trailer that we got a few months ago. But now we have the full trailer, which I'm so excited to check out. Well, I mean, obviously, I already watched it multiple times. It is so good, and I'll be honest, I did shed a few tears watching this just because of that emotion. It hit me so hard, especially as a comics fan, knowing these storylines and recognizing them, but seeing them brought to life here in such a comics accurate way is just so rewarding. I just love seeing it. It almost reminds me of kind of what they tried to do in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, but ultimately failed doing. There's a lot of similarities between this movie and what they try to do in that franchise, except this looks like it's doing it much better. And it's a fan film, so fans are creating it, so they know how fans think. So I think this is going to turn out really well. And if you haven't seen the full trailer already, I'll link it in the description so you can check it out for yourself because it really is amazing. But we're going to go and break down this trailer. Before we do that, I do want to talk about the official synopsis. So again, if you're just now hearing about this project for the first time, this will give you a good idea of what this movie is about. Following the tragic death of his former girlfriend, seemingly caused by his own attempt to save her, Peter Parker, played by Warden Wayne, lingers in his guilt of the past, questioning whether the curse of his alter ego should be buried for good. When he's met by the news that a terminally ill child has requested to meet Spider-Man, Peter contemplates the decision to confront him in his final days. And that is a direct quote from Gavin J. Conop, the director and writer of this fan film. He's kind of the whole creative force behind this movie. It's really due to him that this thing is happening, and just like mad props to him because this just I have such a good feeling about this movie. It's gonna be so good, and just again, you can see based off the synopsis that we're not focusing on the life of Spider-Man because we are dealing with Peter Parker Spider-Man, but this is dealing with life after the loss of his girlfriend Gwen Stacy. She just died because of something he did as Spider-Man, and now we're kind of gonna get the one more day type storyline from the comics where Spider-Man kind of gives up being Spider-Man, or Peter gives up being Spider-Man. I'm really excited to see that. But anyways, now that we've gone over that, let's go ahead and jump into this and break down the official trailer for Spider-Man Lotus. So we start off the trailer in a really dramatic way. Really, the whole trailer is super dramatic. But you start off the trailer with Spider-Man, obviously Peter Parker in his Spider-Man suit, but it's all like covered in like dirt and ashes, and it's like all ripped apart, and definitely seems like he's been through some sort of battle. So I'm wondering if this takes place at the beginning of the movie, possibly maybe even a flashback showing the death of Gwen Stacy, or maybe towards the end of the film as part of the final battle. So we get to see a couple different shots here. We saw his chest with a spider logo, then we got his hand here, his fist with like part of his fingers missing and all that stuff, and then of course the actual goggle piece from the Spider-Man eyes is missing, so you just see the Peter Parker eye poking through there, and just such a good shot there. I love that. The cinematography in this is great as well. So again, Gavin J. Conop, the creative force behind this film. And then we open up on this just beautiful skyline of New York City, most likely Queens, because that's where Peter Parker lives in the comics. And then we get this person checking out the Daily Bugle. And this person is actually Harry Osborn, who we don't know much about in this version of the film because we haven't really seen too much of him, especially in this trailer. We get, I think, maybe 2 or 3 different shots of him. But all those shots are just Harry on his own. So we don't know if he's going to have that friendship and relationship with Peter, or if he's going to be past that, because we don't know exactly how the relationships are going to be playing out in this film, because obviously it is a fan film, so they're going to stay pretty strict to the comics, but they're obviously going to change some things up as well, which I'm honestly excited to see. So that's Harry Osborn right there. And then we have really where we get into the emotional stuff here, because you have Peter and Gwen. They were dating, they were boyfriend and girlfriend. Seems like they're just having a great time being a couple, but then tragedy strikes. And it seems like Peter, throughout this trailer and a couple different shots we see, he's maybe just looking back through maybe photos, and it looked like later actually listening to like a recorded message of maybe her voice, and just like going back and reminiscing on the memories of Gwen Stacy. And you can see just the pain on Peter's face here. I love seeing it. I mean, obviously I don't love seeing it, but you know, for this movie, just that emotion is just such a driving force in this film. And then you have this shot here where we're at a cemetery, and you have Spider-Man crouching down in front of a gravestone. Now, the gravestone on the left says George Stacy, which of course is Gwen Stacy's father, and then the gravestone that Spider-Man is crouching in front of is of course Gwen Stacy. So he is visiting her grave, of course mourning her death, because this doesn't take place too long after her death. And then there's another great shot of Harry. He looks like he's in maybe Times Square in New York. Mary Jane, we have Mary Jane involved in this story, and they really explain here that, you know, obviously the focus is the effect of Gwen's death on Peter and Spider-Man, but we're also going to see that effect on other characters, like, for example, Mary Jane, who, as we see later, seems like they were actually pretty close friends. So Spider-Man now, after this, is kind of just dealing with, like, what can he do? What should he do? Because he feels guilt for this. He feels guilty. He feels like this is his fault, even though it isn't really. It's the fault of the Green Goblin. But, you know, he still feels that guilt. And then we get a fan letter for Spider-Man, where, again, we bring in that role of the child who is terminally ill. I'm not sure if he has cancer or something like that, but some sort of disease where he's unfortunately going to die, and one of his last requests is he wants to meet Spider-Man. And that's something we see reflected in this whole trailer, is that now, after Peter feels that he had that failure of letting Gwen Stacy die, he doesn't think he's worthy enough to be a hero. He doesn't see himself as this child sees him in his eyes. So we see Peter that is just like so overrun with emotions here, and then getting more flashbacks to him and Gwen and their relationship, and again, just such a good couple, just having a great time, until unfortunately tragedy did strike, and he's just going through a rough patch here. This is what we would have seen in The Amazing Spider-Man 3 post Gwen Stacy's death, but unfortunately we never got to see that. And then this is again what I was referring to later with maybe listening to a recording, whether it's like oh, I forgot what it's called, but you know, like when you leave like a message on like somebody's phone or something like that, it seems like that's what this is, and maybe he's just like playing a message just to hear her voice. And again, it's so emotional. Written and directed by Gavin J. Conop. So good. And then we get to see Spider-Man actually visiting this child, and you see his bedroom is filled with a whole bunch of Spider-Man memorabilia, both comics and images, and you saw some action figures in here as well. That's just great. But then Spider-Man is talking to his mother, or at least who I assume is the child's mother, and she's saying basically like, you know, this kid looks up to you, and, you know, I know what you've gone through now, and you may not see yourself in the way that he sees you, but you need to give him something to believe in. And so Spider-Man is really starting to contemplate like what to do now. And again, having more flashbacks to Gwen. You can see Gwen and MJ interacting there. This looks like maybe the death of Gwen. Gwen is dead there, at least I assume she is. Maybe she's just sleeping, but seems like a little bit worse than sleeping there. Based on the characters from Marvel Comics, of course. Oh, this is a great shot right here where we have Spider-Man just staring at a wall of Daily Bugle articles from all of his times as Spider-Man. You can see probably the biggest ones that stands out there, like right next to his head on the right, is Mysterio, new hero in town. You see some other headlines like, wow, Spidey's brand new look. Maybe that's referring to like the symbiote. You see off to the far right, Spider-Man No More, which could be what's happening right now. Vigilante, Let's see, Spider Man. I can't make out any of the other ones, but there's just some really cool references and Easter eggs in there that I love seeing that. And then there is the boy that is terminally ill that Spider Man is visiting, and you can see just how much he really cares about Spider Man, how much he looks up to Spider Man as a hero. And again, that's going to be the big thing in this film, is Peter's going to have to learn to trust himself and see himself as worthy once again, because he doesn't feel that way after the death of Gwen. He feels like he lost his whole world, and that's again what the child's mother is saying, that you need to give them something to believe in, and that's what's going to be happening in this film, and I'm so excited to see that next year. There's again another flashback with MJ and Gwen, again showing their relationship and their friendship there. Nice to see that going on. The capacity for good. MJ, getting pretty interesting here, because obviously we know that throughout the flashbacks Peter and Gwen were together, but after she died, looks like now maybe possibly after Gwen's death, maybe MJ is helping to, like, you know, comfort Peter and like console him and everything, but maybe this could possibly lead to these two getting together. And again, I don't know exactly what they're pulling from the comics and what they're not, whether maybe Peter and MJ were already together before he got with Gwen, or maybe now they're just getting together for the first time, but they are kind of like the main couple for Peter in the comics, so would make sense if that's what ends up happening here in this film. Rest within us all. And then just a great, beautiful shot there, Spider-Man hugging the child. Harry getting all weird there. So I'm not sure if he's going to take on a Green Goblin type role in this movie, because, well, I'll talk about Green Goblin more later when we get to that tease at the end. But you can see the green confetti falling around him, which could represent like a Green Goblin, or green just as in money because he's like a rich playboy brat, something like that. Peter, once again, just looking all surprised. By the way, Warden Wayne, who's playing Peter Parker in this movie, just looks so much like a Peter Parker I imagine would. And so I love that. Great casting. Again, you see that he's got a great acting ability here when we saw him really tapping into his emotions earlier, so I think it's a great casting. You see him just comforting the kid once again. You see the action figures and comics and stuff in the background, really seeing how huge of a fan this kid is of Spider-Man. And then we get, of course, it's a Spider-Man movie, it's a superhero movie, so we get that action. And the CGI here in this is a little bit iffy, but, you know, we are months away from this film, so they definitely have time to work on it. And it is just a fan film, so you have to keep that in mind, that this is all like a non-profit thing, so they had to like raise money to do this, but yeah, I still think it looks awesome. I love this shot here and that sequence of him like swooping down in the city and then swinging up and just being so Spider-Man like, and just it was so good. And then just another heartbreaking moment, Peter telling Gwen that he loves her, and then it flashes the logo, Spider Man Lotus, and then it cuts to darkness, where we then hear a voiceover of a very creepy voice saying Spider-Man and having this very creepy laugh, and that is of course the voice of the Green Goblin. Then we get to see Spider-Man here, which I feel like this is, well, actually I'm not completely sure. This could either be a flashback to Green Goblin killing Gwen Stacy, or possibly towards the end of the movie where this is the big final battle of Spider-Man reconfronting Green Goblin once again. I'm not really sure which one it's going to be, but the Green Goblin is going to be the main villain of this movie, which again makes sense because he's responsible for Gwen's death, and he's going to be played by John Salandria in this film. So I think this is going to be awesome. Obviously I'd like to see what the character looks like, but I think this is going to be really, really cool, because again, that's not what we're focusing on in this movie. We are going to have those superhero action elements with CGI and all that cool stuff, but that's not the focus of this. We're focusing on the emotions and the responsibility of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And so the film is coming in summer of 2022. I don't know all the release details, so definitely check out Gavin J. Conup on Instagram, like all the different social media pages for this movie, to get more details and stuff. But I know I am just excited for this. I think this is going to be amazing. I said this when I watched the teaser trailer, but now I'm saying it even more with this full official trailer, because it just looks so good. This is what I've always wanted to see from Spider-Man, because again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, usually we focus on the whole crazy fun superhero side of things, but this is really taking it down a notch, and it's really a heartbreaking emotional story, which I am so excited to see. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, not fun, but it's just going to be a great story, a great quality movie, and I'm so excited to see this. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the full official trailer for Spider-Man Lotus? So of course, let me know all your thoughts, theories, and predictions of what you think we may possibly see and what you want to see in this fan film of Spider-Man Lotus. And guys, of course, as always, thanks much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything goes on in the Marvel life.